This conference will now be recorded.
Now I'm ready. You can go ahead, Tally.
Okay, so the first is call to order. And that's the chair who is not here, so I guess that's me being the co-chair. So I call this meeting to order. Next is introductions. So I'm Tally, and I am a member of the Napa Svensson, or what do we call this area? The North, I don't know. Anyway, part of the Northeast Comprehensive Plan Committee, and live in Napa. Thanks. I guess, do you want me to call on people? Okay, I'll just call on folks in the line that they're in on my screen. So Gail, you'll be next.
Okay, Gail Hendrickson, Community Development Director.
And Victoria Sage.
Yeah, that's me, planner for Clatsop County Community Development.
Great. And then Commissioner Sullivan.
Hi, I'm Kathleen Sullivan. I'm District 4 Commissioner and also current chair.
Great. Kelly.
I'm Kelly Huckestein. I'm also on the Citizen Advisory Committee for the Northeast.
And Jed Arnold. Jed, you're on mute.
Yeah, sorry, my key press wasn't working there for some reason. Jed Arnold, I work for Hampton Family Forests, which is a major forest landowner in the Northeast District.
Okay. And Cheryl Johnson.
Cheryl Johnson, CAC for the Northeast, and also our liaison from the Northeast to the county meeting, which is on Thursday, not today. Sorry.
Great to have you. Thanks. Okay, and then next on the agenda is the review of meeting summaries. So I don't have those in front of me. Does someone else want to jump in with that?
I mean, I read through them and they looked pretty comprehensive to me. I didn't have any. It's just the like meeting minutes, right, Gail? Is that what? Yeah. So they looked good to me.
Okay, great.
They also look fine to me.
Okay, and now public comment and input. So Jed and Commissioner Sullivan are the public that are here. So do you have any comments you'd like to make?
I don't have any comments today. Thank you.
Well, feel free to jump in later if you think of some.
Okie doke.
Jed, do you have any comments you wanted to make?
No comment for me.
Mm-hmm.
Jed, was that your baby commenting?
That was mine. Sorry.
Always welcome.
Okay, so I think we can jump in to the meat of the meeting and the worksheets. So do you want me to just read through these, Gail, and then have people comment on their thoughts on them?
Yeah, so goal 5, like we talked about, is really a very big goal, and it's supposed to cover open spaces, scenic resources, historic resources, and natural resources outside of the ones that are covered in goals 16 and 17. And you'll see as you've gone through this that most of it's dedicated to aggregate resources. So it's, again, a 40-year-old document, but what I would like to do, or like to have a committee do, if you agree, is just start working through the goals and the policies as they currently exist in the comprehensive plan to see what's still relevant and what should be kept, what needs to be changed and what should be deleted.
Mhm.
We have at least 3 months to scheduled to talk about goal 5, so we don't have to accomplish this all in one night. And then what we also will need to look at in future meetings are new items and new policies and issues that would need to be addressed as part of goal 5. So if it's convenient and works for everybody in the committee to just start going policy by policy and discussing, that's great.
Yeah, I think that makes sense, and I'm glad that we're not trying to get through all of this today. Because yeah, it is a lot. Okay, well, I'll start just by reading the goal to protect and ensure appropriate use of mineral and aggregate resources of the county while minimizing any adverse effects of mining and processing upon surrounding land uses. And then, so we'll start with policy 1. And then these guidelines, do they apply to specific policies, or are they kind of intended to be for everything under goal 5?
Yeah, so the guidelines that are on the left-hand column are actually from the statewide planning goal 5. They will not necessarily line up item for item with what you're seeing in terms of the county's policies and goals. But they're just there more as a reference for you. And I do have the worksheet pulled up, and you should see it on your screen. And I'll be able to type comments in here as we go along. So keep track of things that way.
Great, perfect. Okay, so we'll start with policy 1. The county shall protect significant mineral and aggregate resources consistent with statewide planning goal 5, and the process for complying with the goal specified in Oregon Administrative Rules, Chapter 660, Division 16. So, I mean, this seems very broad, so I don't know how it would be like goal met. That was my first thought. Cheryl, go ahead.
Yeah, I don't know how you want to do it today. Does that work for us to raise hands?
Works for me.
Okay.
I think it's still a small enough group that we could just try, having people jump in when you have something to say rather than, but.
Okay. First off, Gail, your volume is a little bit lower than everybody else's. If you could somehow talk louder or turn yourself up, that would be great. Thank you. And Tally, I wanted to take a step back and sort of look at the big picture here. I found this one to be very confusing and very frustrating. Goal 5 is to, I'm reading across the top now, the purpose is to protect natural resources, conserve scenic and historic areas and open spaces. And yet in all of these pages, I numbered my pages, we have 8 pages, we have one goal. And that one goal addresses use of mineral and aggregate resources, period. So to begin with, this poor old document that Gail pointed out to us is over 40 years old, only has one goal and does not address the bulk of what this is supposed to. So obviously one of our responsibilities, and not just us, but the whole county, is to write goals for all of those other ones. So my notes say, where are the goals on scenic areas, historic areas, open spaces, natural resources? There aren't any goals on all of those, which is bizarre. And then, like you, down the left-hand column, those are the statewide planning goals. And it took me a long time to sort all this out. They are not directly related to the ones on the right. And the Clatsop County document does not address the vast majority of those. So we do need to go back and write goals to address those statewide planning ones. Sorry about the phone in the background.
Okay. Yeah, no, I definitely agree with that. Thank you, Cheryl. So I'm just wondering if there's maybe a better way to do this than, it sounded like what you said, Gail, was that you wanted to first go through what exists and edit that down and then do it like some meetings where we expand and, or, you know, add things that aren't there at all. Is that accurate? Or is it better just to start with what we want to add, you know, what's missing? I don't know. So that's, I guess, it sounds like Cheryl. Yeah, right. Cheryl.
I feel fine to go ahead and read these policies and work our way through those. So to go ahead and continue to do what you started, we just need to keep in our minds that there are 23 policies here, and all of them are on minerals and aggregate. So minerals and aggregate have 23 policies in this chunk, and then farther back in it, there's 7 more. So minerals and aggregates have a total of 30 policies, which is just bizarre. And so we have to get quite a ways back into it before we start dealing with policies on other things. And if
And I feel like I don't know a ton about minerals and aggregates, which I think makes this a little bit challenging. You know, how we determine, you know, what has been done and if it's well written, or, you know, I think that's kind of part of my challenge with this as well, is that, like, you know, I'm not a geologist.
May I ask a question?
That's that Gail, or that Goal 5 class coming up in August, right? Early August, about the Goal. I'm assuming they'll talk about minerals too. And I'm also fine with like going through these, but I'm like, when I saw that pop up, I was like, great, let's not decide anything until that, like, you know, workshop, because it is overwhelming. Yeah, especially with the focus on the thing that we have the least amount of like knowledge about in this group.
Mm-hmm.
Plus,
So
Gail, is this concerning mineral rights and whatnot for what is county owned? Or, because I know that different questions about mining and whatnot have come up in the commission during the 3.5 years that I've been there. Is this just county owned, or is this overall?
this is overall. So if you think about like Knife River Quarry or Teven, those types of sites, in addition to any sites that the county might own. It's not dealing specifically with, you know, mineral rights on, yeah, just go back to what I said before, then I'm going to stop. Yeah. Can everybody hear me? Am I better?
You're
for me, you're still a little bit low.
And also the workshop. So we're going to probably do several Goal 5 workshops. And so I think the first one on Goal 5 is going to focus primarily on wetlands and riparian areas. So we'll have another one that will talk about the aggregate and mineral, but it probably won't be at that very first workshop. So.
Okay. Well, what do you think? I guess I kind of want to throw it out there again about like how we want to go through this. Does it make sense to go through them policy by policy, given that none of us are really subject areas in this and we haven't done the workshops yet? Or would it make more sense to kind of skip around if there's particular policies that folks have thought a lot about or have opinions about? Yeah, Kelly?
I almost think that, like, since we're talking about the like the overarching like format of it, that maybe we could even start there. Like, what is the, like, what format do we want to see? I like looked at a couple other counties Goal 5 to see, because this one seemed just like, I didn't even know it was, you know, going on. It just seemed so all over the place. So I pulled up a couple other counties to read through their Goal 5, also to see how long is it, like what like categories do they highlight and focus on, and like just what format they used, and that was really helpful. But you know, just like kind of like what Cheryl said, like there's how it's set up is there's like this goal and then policy, and it's clearly broken up. Like there is wetlands like listed, and there's policies and things like that, but like, are those categories sufficient? Do we want to make goals for each of those? Are there ones we're missing, or do we want to like break something up? Like almost just like, I think it might be a good idea to start with the format and like the big picture,
Yeah.
I don't know.
No, that's really smart. Can you share like which other counties you were looking at and if there were particular ones that seemed like good for the rest of us to look at?
Well, I have been using Lane County as like a good guideline just because I like their format and the like length of their goals, and I've been kind of and I lived there, so I kind of have like an idea of how it functions. I also just like, yeah, like the whole entire thing is like 70 pages. Like it's very manageable. Things are broken up in like a really manageable style. And it's like an easy download. You can go to the county page and like download, the PDF. But their goal 5 stuff is like 7 pages or like 8 pages. And it's broken up into historical resources, mineral and aggregate resources, flora and fauna, open space and scenic areas, energy, and water resources. So I mean, it's like mostly the same things, but it's broken up into those, and they're all pretty like evenly dispersed. But I was just wondering, like with open spaces and because we're on the coast, and I know there are specific goals that like talk to that. Just thinking like, is there any of those that we need to like focus on more specifically, or like expand upon, or like break, like wetlands is clearly one that it impacts us more than it does in other counties. So,
Right.
yeah.
Yeah, definitely. It sounded like or what I heard when Cheryl was talking is like, it would make sense in terms of a general structure based on the way that the goal is written, that we need to have a section for natural resources, a section for scenic and historic areas, and a section for open spaces. Is that accurate? Like, would that make sense to focus, those categories and then break them down from there?
Can you repeat the categories again really quick, Tally?
I'm just reading from the goal. So natural resources, scenic and historic areas, open spaces, basically. So it's the way the goal is written, it kind of already delineates 3 sections. And so I agree that we shouldn't necessarily, focus entirely on natural resources if, the goal is intended to be for all 3 of, or those categories. I guess, sorry, yeah, Cheryl?
If we want to continue to work with the document that we're given, I just numbered my pages here, and at the bottom of page 4, after policy number 25 for the minerals and aggregates, is a section on mineral and aggregate policies, and then it's got 7 policies of its own. Now I'm on page 5. Energy sources policies looks good. There's 4 policies, but again, there's no goal. Wetlands, there are, as written, there are 4 policies, but again, no goal. Natural areas has policies. Water resources has policies. Wilderness has 1 policy. Historic sites has 7 policies. Cultural areas has 2 policies. So in the document that we've got, we have some existing policies that looked pretty good, at least for a starting place. So I think we don't want to reinvent the wheel. I think we can go ahead and work with what we've been given with sort of 2 goals. One, to know that each of them needs a goal and doesn't have one. And then secondly, for us to look at if there are things we want to add to it. So I'm okay to go ahead and look at those ones that we feel more comfortable with, or the other possibility is if Gail wanted to guide us, we could zoom through there aren't 23 of them, there are 25, the 25 policies on minerals and aggregates. And I would guess that the vast majority of these we're going to dump. I wouldn't think that anybody needs 25 policies on minerals and aggregates. And Gail knows which of these have been fulfilled, which of these are repeated. So possibly we could fly through these and deal with minerals and aggregates today. So there's sort of 2 paths forward. I'm okay either way. Gail, do you have an opinion at this point?
Yeah, so staff did put in some areas where we made notes. For the most part, these are all sort of ongoing things that remain into effect. So when we get an application in, like we did a year or so ago when Knife River expanded their quarry down south of Seaside, so we relied on these policies to review their application. So they're more general guidelines. I am fine with moving forward with it, but I'm no more of a geologist than any of you. And so any technical questions that you might want to ask me, I will tell you I don't know the answer. Most likely, I'm happy to come back to you with an answer at the next meeting. But again, these are not intended to be really deep geological questions and things. It's more, some of it's going to be based on ORS, but it's more guidance about how you review and cite aggregate resources, businesses, and protect them. Because that's really what the goal is supposed to do in terms of aggregate resources, is to protect them and not just completely deplete them. So. And also to protect them from encroaching development. So.
Okay. Well, I think so I understand what you're saying, Cheryl, that we in general want to write goals for the other areas that do have policies but don't have goals yet. And that's maybe something that we should all kind of mull over and think about for the next meeting. And in the meantime, yeah, I think maybe we'll just go forward and try to get through a few of these goals and see, if there are thoughts, or unless I'm also fine with if we want to just jump into some of these other categories like wetlands or energy, if people find the minerals and aggregates too cumbersome right now. So does anyone have an opinion about which direction what we want to jump into right now in this meeting?
Kelly, what do you think? Do you want to deal with minerals and aggregates today, or do you want to go other places? Where's your brain?
My brain, to be really honest with how meaty the aggregate resources thing, I would really prefer to wait until I've had a presentation on it. Is my my instinct. Just because, yeah, I mean, there's a lot of policies. I can't necessarily say that none of them I don't feel like I have a good grasp on what is needed for those, especially how it's broken up. But I feel my knee-jerk reaction would be to wait for the workshop on the aggregates to really dive into the nitty-gritty of it. But
Great. Okay, I think that sounds fine. Is there a section that someone does feel very excited to jump into? I think
Kelly, I'm okay. I'm okay
wetland.
to maybe just go through them as presented. So if we hop over to page 5, the first one that comes up is energy sources policy. And there are 4 of them there, and
Sure.
we could look through those.
Great.
Knowing that there is no goal there, but we can look and see what the policies are and think
And
if
that'll
they're
help us think about a goal maybe. Yeah, I think that's a great idea, since there's fewer policies for these other sections and they don't have goals and we probably want them to. I think that's a good idea. We'll maybe get more done this meeting that way. Okay, great. So I'll just start with policy 1 of energy sources policies. Development shall not be allowed to impair the feasibility of potential wind generating facilities at sites identified as appropriate for such generation. So again, this I don't think goal met really makes sense because that seems like an ongoing thing that would be in place. I don't think there's a way to meet that goal and have it not be relevant anymore because there'll always be new sites that someone could potentially. So I guess I have a question for Gail now. What makes a site, so when they're looking for this goal, what makes a site have the potential, wouldn't anywhere have some potential for wind generation? So is there some kind of standard for how much wind generation a site needs to have to have development not be allowed?
I'm sure that there is a standard that the industry uses. I don't know off the top of my head what that standard would be or how, I don't know what the standard would be. For example, though, I do know that we have a firm that is looking at some property out on Nikolai Ridge to do meteorological tower in preparation or to determine whether or not it would be feasible to put wind turbines up there. So what the policy one is really saying is that, and it's probably going to be higher sites as opposed to sites that are going to be in a valley because they just won't collect that wind generation. But I think what the policy is trying to say is that when you're converting areas from resource areas or allowing housing or commercial developments, you want to be careful to put that zoning in a place that is not going to, in the future, potentially prohibit something like wind turbines or some sort of wind generation facility. Because if the goal, and remember everything ties together, so as we move on to other goals, and if we want to encourage different energy types or the use of wind turbines or offshore wind farms or things like that, we have to also remember that we need to, protection might be a strong word, but we need to look out for areas and make sure that we don't take them out of circulation as potential sites. Does that make sense? So if you're looking for the exact number of what that magical cutoff is and where it might fall in the county, I don't have that. I don't even know if I could find it, but I'm sure the industry does have a number.
Kelly?
Would it make, I mean, just with the wording, it is a little bit confusing. So I wonder if something along the lines, I'm just totally spitballing here, but something about the county should encourage the exploration of these possibilities and I don't know, just also encouraging that is not only should we protect other places shouldn't be allowed, but that also the exploration of the renewable energy sources is also encouraged, the exploration of that, or the other agencies to develop plans on that, where it's not just protecting this idea, but also encouraging the development potentially of it.
Yeah, I feel like it's a bit of an odd policy, because it's basically saying we're gonna hold this space even if there's nothing planned, because we see it as a site that could have this potential, and we don't want to not to have that opportunity be taken away in the future. So I like to think about how that, so someone's trying to build on this hill, whatever it is, and then it could be challenged just because it has the potential to be a wind generation in the future based on this policy. Is that that seems like what it's saying?
Okay, so let me make an analogy that might clarify a bit. So when we were working on goal 3, the farm agricultural lands, we heard from some committee members where people have moved in next to established farms or move into an area that is zoned for farms and then become upset when a farm actually is there and produces farm smells. So this is kind of the same type of policy. So maybe if you put it in terms of that, it might make it a little bit clearer to understand.
Cheryl?
This policy, I'm liking it. So what we have to say is the goal met? No, it isn't. Should we retain the goal? I'm liking this goal, so I'm giving it a yes for retaining it. And I'm glad that there is something in this, in our plan about wind generating facilities. So I'm pleased that wind generating facilities is even in there. So I'm good on this one.
Okay. Yeah, I would like to
Oh, go
have
ahead.
a little more clarity in terms of, you know, either specific sites in the county that this goal is referring to, or whatever that's, you know, whatever would make a specific site, you know, like how much wind a site has to have to make it so that this applies. I guess I'm just curious about that, and it seems like there would need to be some kind of specificity. But I agree. I like it. I just want to know, you know, exactly what it means, you know, for us to be holding land aside from other uses for wind generation. Okay, so is there any other comments on policy 1? Okay, I will move on to policy 2. The county will rely on state and federal permitting processes to govern the location of low-head hydro projects and to resolve any conflicts that may result from such projects.
Gail, I don't know what low-head hydro projects are.
Yeah, I assume it meant like giant dam, but like little dams on littler rivers or streams, but I don't know. Yeah, Gail, do you know more?
No, I don't.
Okay. So I'd say we skip that one until we know more. Kelly?
One of the things that I was thinking for this whole energy section is like using the format of that policy 1, but adding more options, like saying that development should not be allowed to impair the feasibility of potential wind generating sites, but maybe adding like, you know, like biomass hydroelectric, like it can be more encompassing than like having to split each policy, like say that same thing for each type of like renewable resource energy that we're like referring to, and maybe like a policy could be to add like all the kinds of like renewable energy sources that we're talking about, and then like if there is other things within those, but it seems like they're in this energy sources policies, they've like identified wind, but then that low head hydro project is like worded very differently. Like, is it being like given that same benefit? It's very confusing to me that everything's kind of like separated out, but then like worded very differently, as opposed to like, are we saying that we want there to be emphasis put on renewable energy sources? What are those together? Like, do we want to encourage the development of that? Do we want to protect these things? Like, it can be a little bit more broad in the way it's worded, and not like this specific site, this, and then this other thing, this thing, but then this other kind of energy like has this other wording. It just is very like chopped up sounding to me. So
I agree with Kelly. And so, Gail, what I'm hearing is that we would like to have either a goal or a policy saying that we encourage renewable resources and not just limited to wind generator, but others also. And Gail, do you happen to know the history of these 4? Were these added more recently? Were these part of the original document 40 years ago? Or
to the best of my knowledge, they are still the original policies. and I have not gone back and pulled old minutes or documents to figure out why they were put in there. I haven't done that research.
Yeah, that's okay.
Just seems kind of sad to me that in 40 years, we don't have more renewable energy projects in the county. Just saying.
Right. Well, and it seems like the goal does not actually encourage that. It just has these like narrow things it's supposedly, protecting, which could, obviously has an effect on that.
Right. Is there a way that we could include like community solar, if, I don't know if, that could be involved in permitting, or how the county exactly can encourage or, facilitate that. But that is, potentially a source where, the community members that don't necessarily have property or the ability, or, they have too many trees or whatever, maybe there could be a way the goals can encourage, other avenues of using, roof space or land space that's available for community solar projects. I don't know exactly how to include that in the policies or goals, but
I am keeping notes up here as we go along, so I've put it into the notes section.
Good.
Okay. So policy 3, Clatsop County shall apply the Goal 5 administrative rule to oil, gas, nuclear, and large-scale hydro that are proposed in the future. What exactly is the Goal 5? Magnolia, I need you to put in your address. Sorry.
Okay, so the Goal 5 administrative rule is out of Oregon Administrative Rules, and it basically tells you how you would go about processing a request for one of these types of facilities.
Okay, and that's like, I mean, we don't do offshore oil here, so is there like, I guess I don't have any comments about that. Like, it doesn't seem like there's going to be any large scale hydro or nuclear here, or oil or gas. I guess there was the whole LNG thing that could come back. Is that what this is kind of referring to?
Cheryl, did this help at all during the LNG fight?
I don't have a clue what Goal 5 administrative rule is, so I can't have any comments on this until I understand what that is, and it concerns me. Are they saying that there are things we can't do? Are they saying things that we can do? It just wholesale says apply Goal 5 administrative rules, done, move on. I don't know what Goal 5 is. I don't know what the Goal 5 administrative rules are. So.
About what that is? Okay.
Okay, so this is the DLCD website. So it talks about specifically Goal 5, it tells you what it covers, and then these are the administrative rules that you would use to make sure that your comp plan complies with Goal 5, and then if you are coming in for permitting as well, then we would also utilize some of the rules that are in here. I think Ian may have sent you out some of these administrative rules with your packet a while ago, maybe a couple months ago. You may have gotten these. But what I can do is get you the links for these so that in one of our future meetings, you'll have a chance to go through them and look through them, and then we can talk about it more if that would work better for you.
Yep, sounds good.
Okay.
Yeah, that sounds good, Gail, to give us a link to it or something so that we could read it at our leisure and try and wrap my brain around it. Thank you.
Okay. So moving along. If and when the city of Astoria intends on constructing a hydroelectric facility at the Youngs River Falls site, Clatsop County shall, in cooperation with the city of Astoria, apply the Goal 5 administrative rule. So yeah, and then there's a staff note on this one that says, is this something the city is considering? Yeah, I had never heard of them doing that at Youngs River Falls, so I'm very curious to know if this is something they're still considering.
Yeah, we will be reaching out to the city to confirm or deny that one.
Okay, great. Okay, so yeah, so we got through everything in energy sources. Does anyone have anything they want to add to this section? I think we've talked a little bit about just adding other types of renewable energy. Anything else anyone has come to mind? Kelly?
I think as long as we add some other language around other types of renewable energy and kind of put a little bit more emphasis, or at least think about emphasizing like those opportunities, that's all I would really add. And then clearly getting rid of that one if that isn't, valuable anymore. But just maybe just in the actual goal stating more intention as opposed to what here.
And Gail, I'm leaning very close to my screen and reading the notes that are written in there in blue. So Chinook Indian Nation would not support low-head hydro projects anywhere. Reprioritization of energy sources to wind, solar, wave generation to make low-head hydro projects a technology of last resort, and then consider prohibiting low-head hydro projects. So those are our notes from staff.
Those are notes from the Clatsop Plains Citizen Advisory Committee that happened last week.
Okay. And so are we ready to move on? And do we want to touch on wetland policy next?
Could I ask if any of the public members have any comments on that section?
Kathleen or Jed, did you want to comment on energy at all?
I would just say I don't think this area has to deal with wave energy. Representative Deb Boone was working so much on wave energy. I don't know if that went anywhere, if that would be included under any alternative resources. And also, when you're talking about dams, I'm thinking about Michigan and those dams that were breached, but this county has a lot of issues, and I don't know if this is the place to deal with it with all the levees and dikes and stuff. So that may be a separate thing altogether.
And I don't have any comments on the energy policy. I would just like to bring it to the committee's attention that these were topics that weren't necessarily noticed in the public notice. And I don't know if that is an issue or not, but folks that might be interested in wetlands or energy policy might not necessarily have attended this meeting.
That is a good thing to keep in mind. What do you think, Gail? Should we put this off until another meeting when we make more accurate notice? Gail?
Hold on, I want to bring up what the actual notice we put in the notice, so I know, because at that point, then we just disband the meeting. Hold on a sec.
And it seems like all of these things we're going to retouch on. So hopefully we can be a little bit more specific. I think this was like, my understanding is it's like kind of like a broad stroke of just going through what's there, but not necessarily like we're going to check off that we did energy and not come back to it or whatnot. So.
Okay, yeah, so we did not specifically state goal 5, and we certainly didn't get into the nitty gritty of which part of goal 5 you would talk about tonight, because there's no way I could predict that. But we did not specifically state goal 5, so yes. So really, you know, at that point, if you wanted to, we probably could just end the meeting because we didn't specifically even state that we were going to talk about goal 5, and that's my mistake.
Okay. I think, well, I feel good about just like, you know, getting a sense of what other people were able to grasp out of this stuff. And it made me feel a little bit better. It's, you know, something that we're going to be working through for a bit and have some workshops on. So I think that's a good, I feel like it was a good meeting in that sense. So thank you all for coming. And let's see.
Kelly?
Yep.
I just wanted to say you guys are rocking. You guys, this is an excellent meeting. Thank you. And I wanted to remind everybody that at 5, Senator Merkley has a town hall meeting also.
Oh, good to know. That sounds great. Thank you very much, Kathleen, for that reminder. And Cheryl, what did you want to say?
I feel fine to move forward. I mean, it did go out as a public notice, and because we're not beginning and ending it today is not the only opportunity. At the very beginning, Gail said that we would be working on this for at least, well, that the time set aside for it is 3 meetings. There's a lot to cover here, and it's very deep for us. I think to continue to hack through this and begin to get a handle of what is and is not here, I think is a good use of our time. And I think most of us had this time set aside to use tonight. I hate to just abandon it or trash it. For instance, just in going through the energy source policies, those 4 policies, we've told Gail there's additional information that we don't have that we need. So hopefully we will understand Goal 5 administrative rule next time. I'm very interested in looking at, I'm hoping that Kelly will send us a link or the info for what Lane County is doing for their Goal 5. So 1 vote for carrying on, unless Gail thinks that we are just so far whacked out of compliance that we have to abandon it.
Okay, what I would suggest, since we do have the group here, if you can just go through and identify areas where you want more information for next time, not necessarily to go through the policies themselves and say yay, nay, or change them. But if you could identify the areas like we did with administrative goal 5, and I'll look up low-head hydro projects and things like that, then that will give me a list of things to start gathering for you for the next meeting. Jed or Commissioner Sullivan, would you have a problem with that if we did that?
Well, I have a question. I don't know if it applies to this area or not, but in the ODF meeting yesterday about the habitat conservation plan, there was talk, excuse me, a lot of talk about the roads that get built with forestry management. And are the roads and is that, I know it's probably dealt with in the Forest Practices Act. Is that something that we deal with in our comprehensive plan?
Well, Goal 4 specifically covers forest lands, and I know that there are some policies that are currently in the plan. I believe that talk in general terms about roads and maintaining them and making sure that they're not eroding, or maybe I've misremembered and that was what somebody suggested we put in. But Goal 4 was the primary discussion about that, where we would have looked at those types of issues.
Okay, thanks. I guess when we were talking about minerals, I was thinking about Teven Brothers and their rocks that are going to be used for building roads. So, um,
Well, that would be part of this goal, but I guess what is the connection that you're trying to make with the logging roads and this one? Do you have a specific concern?
well, I just it's part of the landscape, and it's a pretty it's used a lot in this area. So I'm just wondering, maybe it does fit all under timber. So I guess I don't have a real clear comment other than my thoughts there.
Okay, and I guess Jed, if the committee were to pull out items that they want more information on, do you have a problem with that, or do you feel that's a violation of the public notice?
No, and I'm by no means an expert on this. I am just wanted to make sure that there wasn't some sort of accidental tripping up that caused issues. I personally don't have any issues with it. And I think that what you're suggesting, Gail, is quite prudent to, if you're going through and just saying like, hey, this is stuff that we want to learn more about, I don't see how anyone could, you know, feel like they were left out of the discussion if there wasn't, if discussion about policy changes wasn't made today.
I appreciate you bringing all that up, Jed. Since I didn't actually see the public notice, I'm really glad that you brought that up. Thank you.
Okay, great. Let's forge ahead then. And yeah, I'll just still read the policies, and then we can, if anyone wanted more information about something or clarification, or then we'll talk about that. So wetland policies, policy 1, the county will protect identified significant freshwater wetlands for which no conflicting uses have been identified from incompatible uses. So I guess my first question, Gail, is has the county identified, you know, how much of this has already been done?
Yeah, so when it was done in 1980, there were wetlands that were identified, and those are included in Goal 5. So if you go through your background materials that were given to you, you'll see a map in there and a description of the different wetlands. For example, down by Delmore Loop, there are, where the cranberry bogs are, some of those areas are specifically called out as freshwater wetlands in Goal 5.
Mm.
I have a couple of questions. In the background report, it referred to an ad hoc wetlands advisory committee or commission, and that they made 4 recommendations to the Board of County Commissioners in 2017. And then it explains that there was a change on the board and there wasn't any follow through. But I'm wondering if we could or should look at those recommendations from 2017. So that was the Wetlands Advisory Commission. And then the background report also referred to that the DSL staff was working on an inventory, and I'm wondering if that inventory for Clatsop County has been completed. So those are.
So, well, I can answer both of those right now. So the background materials that Ian sent out to you a couple months ago, I'll find the email and resend. But that did include the background policies or the recommendations from the Wetlands Advisory Committee. So you do have those in your email already, but I'll resend the email.
Thank you. Okay.
And then the second question, which I've already forgotten, was.
It referred to that DSL staff was going to do an inventory, and I was wondering if that inventory had been completed.
Yeah, so the state DSL, they have put together now the statewide wetland inventory, which is more detailed and a little finer, more finely refined than the national wetland inventory, and that is up on the state's website, and so that is operational now.
Okay, so that one is on the state DSL website?
Yeah, yes.
And it'll just be called something wetlands inventory?
It's statewide wetlands inventory.
Okay. Okay.
Okay. Okay, great. Thank you. And then policy 2, a 10-acre site within wetland site 6 shall be provided for gravel extraction. And then it says, as a staff note, is site 6 now under the control of the Nature Conservancy? And were you, Gail, did you, or Victoria, did you answer that question?
All right, sorry, I was typing into the chat box the web address for the statewide wetland inventory. So it's in the chat box right now. So because I don't multitask well, I missed what the question was, Allie, I'm sorry.
It just says as a staff note for policy 2, is site 6 now under the control of the Nature Conservancy?
Yeah, we think it is, but we just need to go back and verify. If you look at the maps in Goal 5, they have no parcel lines or lot lines on them, so we're kind of having to guesstimate, so we do need to go back and verify that, but we're pretty sure it is.
Okay, great. Okay, now let's see. Okay, now we're into cultural area. No, is that? Sorry. Yeah, no, that's the next page. What is policy 3? Okay, I see. So then the following requirements shall apply to wetland site 7, which also contains white-tailed deer habitat. A, all industrial development shall be located north of the railroad right-of-way. The area between the railroad right-of-way and US Highway 30 shall be designated for protection of its wetland characteristics. So should I stop at each letter, I assume, and ask if anyone has any questions about this?
Actually, Talia, for me at least, we don't need to read through all of the A, B, C, and D.
That's
Gail, I do need a clearer understanding of where wetland site 7 is.
All right.
Refers to Driscoll Slough, refers to Westport Slough.
Right, yeah, and that is coming off that map in Goal 5, so let me bring that up here real quick. If you want to continue moving on, while I bring it up.
Sorry, baby, mommy's in a meeting right now.
And Gail, is there a simple place for me to go to find wetland site 7?
Yeah, let me bring up Goal 5. They're in the, so hold on, let me move the tab over. All right, so we have an intern who's making changes to the county's website. So if you go to community development, and we're going to learn this one as we go along.
Oh, good.
It's going to be under
Show and tell works well for me.
Land use regulations here on the right-hand side, comprehensive plan. We've got Goal 5. This is statewide Goal 5. This is county Goal 5. And then because it's a scanned document, you can't search it. So you will just have to scroll down until you get to the wetland section.
It's in the, like, if you have your big packet, giant Normo Goal 5 thing that we got in a separate binder, it's pretty like close to the front. there's a map, and it looks like Site 7 is near Westport, is what it's referring to. There's not really good page numbers, but.
Yeah, thank you, Kelly. I do have my ginormous full 3-ring binder, and I can go back. Yeah, if there's not a better map online, I can just go back and dig out that funky one. Yeah, it is near Westport, and that's why I wanted to try and understand it better, because it's in.
Yeah, and Site 6 was like near Seaside, so the Site 7 definitely applies to us more.
This is Site 7 up here.
Okay. And Gail, are there newer, more modern maps? Is there an other place for us to look at wetland Site 7?
Cheryl, you're hilarious.
I know.
No, there's not, Cheryl.
It may exist there, you know, and I just didn't. So far, I've been working with the printed documents that they send us because I'm old school. But maybe Gail's going to say, "Well, of course, Cheryl, just go here, here, and here, and you'll pop up this beautiful map." And I just didn't know about it.
No, it's part of the reason why we're updating the.
Exactly.
And Cheryl's part of the reason we won that last battle.
Okay. Thank you, Gail. I have a better sense, and I will do my homework. I will go back and look at the funky print one in the big binder. Thank you.
So yeah, it seems like that policy is very like location specific, and it makes more sense to look at that when we're all.
I'd be curious to know what, since a lot of these are like this shall be done, I would just be curious to know which of these like has some of these things been done, or like what specifically has been done in this specific area, how it's broken out.
Okay, I will bring that for your next meeting.
Do folks feel good about moving on to the natural areas policies, or is there any other comments about the wetlands or questions?
I'm good to move on. Thank you.
Okay, so yeah, I mean, I get like, yeah, I don't need to read them to you if everyone has it in front of them. I can just folks can just take a second to skim through it and then say if they have any questions. Is that better for folks? Okay.
I don't have any specific questions about this one, other than clearly there's going to be a lot to add, but since we're not doing that right now, I don't have anything like about exactly how it's written.
Yeah, I'm okay on one. Charlie, are we still on policy 1, or are we on all 3 of them?
I thought everyone was reading through all of them.
Okay.
But if we want to do them one at a time, we can do that as well.
No, that's fine. policy 3 refers to water districts, and so Gail, asking for the moon again. Is there a nice map of local watersheds for the water districts? Because there's all these little, you know, funky ones, especially out here. There's Napa Water District, and there's Lewis and Clark Water District, and there's Wickiup Water District. And does there exist a nice map of water districts?
There is a nice map of water districts, and I'm pretty sure we've even got it on our web maps, but let me check real quick.
And then while she's looking up maps, just a consideration for all of us. Do the local watersheds need protections? Do we want to try and write protections for them? So that's just to throw it out there for us to think about it, especially us out here in, well, all of Clatsop County is rural, but I'm just thinking in our neighborhood, there are so many funky little water districts that are fragile.
Yeah, I know we have the water districts on. It looks like they took the watershed map off when they did the new web maps. But let me double check that while we're not in the meeting. So I'll make a note of that one.
Yeah, and if you could find it somewhere and just send us a reference to it later, that's fine. Gail, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
That's the end of my questions for water resources.
There's an asterisk down at the end of policy 5. I was just wondering if that's of the in the water one. I was just wondering what the asterisk.
Yeah, so the asterisk means that it's been amended. That was an amendment was made to that policy at some point in the past. For whatever reason, they didn't use the standard connotation, which we would use today, or in which I'm familiar with, where you would actually put the ordinance number behind it. So this just tells you that it's been amended. Same thing with the double asterisk down below it in wilderness areas.
Yeah, thanks.
Gail, is there any talk about quantity, or is that left to the state water board? It's got quality, but not quantity, so I just wondered. That's all right. If you don't know, that's fine, Gail.
No, sorry, my computer timed out on me and I had to log back in. So to go back, so quantity is all dealt with if you're drawing from a well or surface water. That's going to be dealt with through different agencies. The wells will go specifically through the Water Resource Department, and that's Nikki Hendricks, who works out of Tillamook. So does that answer your question, Commissioner?
Well, I guess what I was thinking about was last year when I got notified by somebody at the state that said, you know, that we had been in a drought, and whenever you look at the water maps that come to us in email, we're kind of a grayed out area because there's not the infrastructure in place to check on quantity of water in case of a drought and whatnot. But I think maybe that's outside the scope, so I'll just leave it at that.
I have a question about the wilderness areas. how, like, again, is there like a actual definition of what exactly makes something wilderness versus some other type of land?
Yeah, we do not have a definition, and Clatsop Plains Committee also had a similar question. They were wondering if there were any in the county, and there's none that we're aware of that are federal, but we need to go back and verify that.
Okay, so I guess we'll move on to historical sites or historic sites. Are there any questions about those?
I was thinking about, I wanted to call Granny Patty about this because of her work on the historic cemetery. But I didn't get around to calling her, so.
Yes, I also have a note down. Do we want to write some protections for historic cemeteries? They get referred to in here, but they actually got referred to, I think, in the background material. But then I didn't see any policies for historic cemeteries. The background material said that there were 27 identified in Clatsop County. And it did mention one in Swenson. I don't even know of one in Swenson. I believe that the one in Napa is a historic cemetery. So I think that's just a general question for all of us. Do we want to try to write in some protections for historic cemeteries? And then
So
my other note here, go ahead.
I was just saying, like, that's more of like a policy question that we'll punt to another meeting. But I am.
The background materials also refer to archaeological sites, saying that there were 53 known sites in Clatsop County. So again, just for our group to think about, do we want to try to write some protections for archaeological sites?
And I think that's more separated that out to the cultural areas. Seems to like address the archaeological a little bit, but I think they could be kind of addressed in both.
And Gail, policy number 7 says that this will be completed in the next 2 years. Do we know, has that been completed?
I would have to double check on that. It does not look like it has been, but I would want to verify that before I say yes or no.
And policy also refers to our friend Goal 5 administrative rule. So we do need to understand our Goal 5 administrative rule thing.
Do we know if there are plaques at the Falls Pulp Mill and Shepherd Morse Sawmill? It seems like if that's a fairly small thing. If they're there, then we can, that doesn't have to be its own policy necessarily.
Yeah, we were not even sure where these are. So if anybody does know, I'd be happy to check, but I don't know where they are.
I wonder if that museum out at Camp 18 would know.
And does anybody know where the Westport Log Tunnel is? Jed, do you happen to know?
I do not. I have never heard of that before. It might be worth talking to the folks at the museum. I know that they put together, or they were working on a history of some of that industry at least last year, so they might have a lot of research on this sort of thing easily available.
And Dirk sometimes knows local history things too. I'm sorry he's not here tonight.
And Ted seems to know in the roads department. He knows a lot of history too.
I have no more questions for historic sites.
There, I'm good to go on that one.
Okay, cultural areas are next, and there's just a couple. So
And I know we're not getting into changing anything yet, but I would just like to also think about potentially combining these two as like historical and cultural. They're kind of together just because they're, we can put native sites as also history. I don't know why it has to be separated out to cultural. Maybe just put them together as historic and cultural sites in one section.
And I had just jotted down a question that scenic areas is not addressed in here. And maybe it got covered between historic and cultural, I don't know. So I guess that's a question for us. Do we want to try to address scenic areas?
I was just thinking that too and maybe combining that with the wilderness, since we don't really know if there's specific wilderness areas. Maybe it could be scenic areas or, something along those lines. Because I also was just noticing that scenic wasn't specifically mentioned.
Yeah, so goal 5 does discuss scenic areas, but there are no specific policies related to them. So there is discussion actually in the goal, but nothing that came out of it apparently that was worth putting into the policy section back in 1980.
Yeah, that's what I was noticing. So maybe, yeah, in your notes, we want to write that maybe we want to address scenic areas. Same thing, open spaces is not specifically listed. We don't have any policies for open spaces. And open spaces, I assume, are things like parks.
So there is actually a separate goal that addresses recreation that we'll get to. I believe it's goal 8, I think it's goal 8, that specifically talks about recreational lands.
Yeah, I noticed, this is getting back into things we're not necessarily addressing today, but I noticed that in part of the goal, they did mention open spaces as including things like golf courses and private areas. So I think it's it seemed to me any larger out, open space, was very broad. And that was a question I had about that as well, is just if there was a specific definition.
Yeah, there is no definition. Okay, if we could, going back to aggregate for a moment, what type of specific information? And we can obviously pull up Chapter 660, Division 16 for next time. But are there other items from that section that you would like me to dig a little deeper into for you?
I would appreciate recommendations from staff about which of these we can combine or which have been fulfilled and we don't need anymore, because that number on one subtopic seems excessive. So
Okay, I can work on putting that together for next time as well.
thank you. I don't have any other questions on the minerals and aggregates.
I think I'm going to recommend that we call it or wrap up for the day. It seems like a good amount to.
I have
Yep.
I have one more area that we did not currently have policies on, fish and wildlife habitat, and it was nicely referred to in the background report. And one of the things I wanted to say is that I really appreciate the background reports that are written up each time, Gail. It gives a nice overview and what's happening specifically in Clatsop County. And then it sort of helps me to go and read these policies and goals. So the background report says, currently there are no policies specific to habitat conservation and protection. And then they talk about the DSL identified essential salmon habitat waters. And I'm wondering that if we want to include that list or address that in any way. And then the background report also talked about the Clatsop County fisheries, one of which is on Blind Slough, which is in our area. And again, do we want to be writing policy on that to provide protections for that?
I would definitely like to see a fish and wildlife section in this whole goal part, at least something along these lines of these areas, kind of added to it as well. Something to add.
And now, Tally, I'm really done with all my comments.
Sorry, my daughter's just, she's ready for me to be done. But I appreciate you all. Okay, so any more public comment from the members of the public? Okay, Kathleen or Jen?
Hi, you guys. I need to get off because I got a phone call. So sorry about that. And I have another meeting after the phone call. So thanks for everything. All right.
Thank you, Commissioner Sullivan, for joining us.
Oh, you guys rock. You guys rock.
Okay, so I think since we're still missing 2 members, the doodle poll seemed to work best for setting the meeting time. So I don't think we should set that at this meeting unless someone else vehemently disagrees. I think the doodle worked fine.
Okay, the one thing to keep in mind is we're trying to send out a postcard to everybody with the different meeting dates and times on there. So the longer you delay setting your regular meeting date and time, it holds up our postcard because we're trying to send one postcard to all the unincorporated area with all the different groups on there. So maybe hopefully next time you can be prepared, or we'll have enough members to be able to pick that date and time.
In the
Is it
doodle,
allowable?
can we
Is it
just,
allowed? Oh, go ahead.
oh, sorry. I was just going to
Go
say, can we just set the permanent time as the doodle? Like, I just don't feel comfortable setting a permanent time for Jen and Dirk if, you know, they're not here.
Or is it permissible for us to do that via email, maybe?
Yeah, we can do it through a doodle poll. My understanding was we just were doing the doodle poll to set the next meeting date and time and hoping to get everybody here so we could pick a permanent meeting date and time. But I can do it either way. Either way works. So.
Cheryl, does that work for you?
Yeah, I'm fine with doodle.
Great.
I'm sorry that after we still ended up missing 2 tonight, even though we doodled.
Yeah, I know. It's hard to set things for a month in advance. But okay. And then any closing comments or adjournment before we adjourn?
Tally, I had 2 things to say. One is the workshop that Gail just announced to us coming up on August 5th for Goal 5. I will not be able to attend. I will be out of town. So hopefully a couple of folks from our group will be able to go. So I just wanted to give you all a heads up. I will not be able to attend that one. And then I just wanted to mention that yesterday I went to a workshop put on by Oregon Department of Forestry on the habitat conservation plan for the Western Oregon State Forestry. And that was very interesting and I learned a lot. And if any of you, just as individuals, wanted to talk about that, I could share my notes and give you a layperson's, I am not a professional forester, give you a layperson's overview on that. So that's just out there. So it was the habitat conservation plan for Western Oregon State Forests. And we just came off of all of our work with that Goal 4 forestry. And that's all.
Am I right in assuming, Gail, that the workshop's going to be recorded for people that can't be there?
That's correct, yes. And as I said, it'll likely focus on wetland areas and riparian areas.
Okay, so then I think that's all and we will adjourn. So,
Thank you, Tally. Thank you, Gail.
thank you.